First question's a warm-up.
Yeah.
Tell us about your first car.
My first car was let's see here. It was an early 70s Chevy truck that my dad had, and I broke it in half jumping it.
Was my family's, and it was falling apart. I needed a ride to go to college, and they gave that to me, and I loved it. It was an amazing car.
My first car was a 1956 Ford Fairlane. I loved it.
I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but my first car was a Ford Mustang. So actually, I grew up as a Ford guy, and had Mustangs. Always loved Mustangs, but had the opportunity to come to GM. So now I'm a GM guy. So that was my first car.
Yeah, my first car was a Hyundai Elantra. Nothing to write home about because I was piss poor. But one of my favorite early cars that I had was a Fiat 500 Albarth.
Some would say the summer of 2024 can be dubbed the summer of cyber resiliency, based on a number of different events that occurred. What would you say is your greatest takeaway from the summer of 2024?
No matter what the situation, whether it's a software bug or a real cyber event, we have to be prepared. Agility, adaptability. And I don't think we do enough muscle testing. And so building that cyber exercise preparedness plan is really paramount.
Communicate. I think a lot of organizations who really have developed a well-organized communication channels, had decent incident response plans, and good backup and recovery. Again, not 100%, really recovered well and were resilient during the summer, from the CrowdStrike to CDK. These two incidents it was really highlighting, okay, can we really get stuff done? We've seen some organizations who've had challenges, could not recover, and had massive losses. One of these companies is very well known, and we all fly it. Even with a dealership, I mean, that's devastating, right? What does that mean for us? We're a tier 1 supplier. If any of our OEMs can't sell their cars, there would have been devastating consequences if this took any longer. So yes, if they had these basic preparedness in place, did some type of tabletop exercise, or have been always on top of how they can recover, and if things are working properly, they should have been okay. My takeaway is, don't stop. Continue to test your resilience posture. There is no question about it. We are going to be challenged. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
It was kind of a rough summer, frankly, for public things and frankly, non-public things. There was a lot going on. I think there was a lot of learnings. First of all, resiliency is key. I mean, I think CrowdStrike was one of those where we saw that the tech stack can be fragile, and one issue can really reverberate across the entire industry, across sectors. So I think that's one thing. I think in other areas, we really have started to understand that we have to look at the big picture. We can't just necessarily think about data and just think about a breach. We really have to think about the entire business. We have to understand our key dependencies, and both upstream and downstream. So for example, we build vehicles, and so of course we have an assembly plant. It's very important, and we want that plant to be running. But within a couple of days, if we have feeder assembly plants or suppliers go offline, those shut down as well. So we could do an amazing job protecting our assembly plant. And if we don't do the right things in the supply chain, it kind of doesn't matter. So really understanding and putting that resilience around those entities that are frankly, making the revenue for the company becomes really important. So I think there's been a lot of learnings from all of those events where we've been able to bring it back and say, here's how we're going to do prioritization a little different. Here's how we're going to really think about the business and tie together both the technical and the business side of things.
So in your view, what are some of the most effective strategies some of the leading organizations are employing while integrating cybersecurity into product development and manufacturing processes?
I think the security function has to step outside the traditional security organization. And when you start getting into the security of products and manufacturing sites, you really need to understand those domains. They have their own cultures, they have their own processes, they have their own way of doing work, and language too, frankly. And so what we found to be the most effective is working directly with those leadership teams, understanding their processes, whether it's a development process, whether it's how you do manufacturing, and then inserting security at the right places. So that's where I think the security team can bring the know-how of, here's the key points that we need to be a part of what you're doing, and then whatever process they're using, I don't care. How do we do that as a closed loop situation? So that's what I found to be effective. Also just making sure that you have leadership buy-in from those areas. making sure that they understand what you're saying. So sometimes speaking in their language can't always make everyone speak in security language. So understand, meet them where they are. And I find if you keep that kind of dialogue open, it's usually successful.
The earlier you build security into your product, the better it is. Secure by design isn't just a concept, isn't just theory. This is something that can actually be implemented, right? So things like threat modeling, threat hunting, right from the get-go, because especially with embedded security, it isn't something that you can slap onto your product after it's done. Same with manufacturing systems.
So there's a number of activities, right? So basically secure by design is number one. Number two followed up would be, I would say, building in agility and the ability to integrate in across product IT, OT integration. I would say also utilizing the standards, the automotive cybersecurity standards, frameworks like NIST, implementing those, training and education, which is really paramount, cybersecurity preparedness, exercising that muscle memory and having cyber response and preparedness programs, along with, last but not least, zero trust architectures.
Well, there's a bunch of strategies, and I think it's also how do you introduce them? Like, what is a natural progression? So I think, a lot of it, depending on your company, it's just getting awareness to the threats. Why does the product development lifecycle have to take it serious? From my experience, development is always one that you have to kind of partner and talk to about that a little bit more because they're probably the most technically savvy stakeholders, right? So share the threats. I think then it's just getting the basics in place. You can go through all the tools, but as you get those tools kind of integrated into their life cycle, have it be metric-based. So it's easy to consume, and metric-based is always really objective, so you kind of eliminate the emotions. I think probably the third thing I would say is build them as many playgrounds as you can to experiment, where it's an overused adage, but it's kind of like brakes on a sports car. You want to give them as many controls so they can go fast, but yet not put the company at risk. So I'd say those three things. Share risk, get the basics in place, and have the reporting objective and metric based, and then give them playgrounds that are safe where they can experiment.
So what are some of the features that a dream converged enterprise SOC should have?
I think on paper, in a perfect world, like having a converged SOC where everything comes together makes, it sounds perfect. And I think where we are and what we see is there's still so much context required for the various parts of the business that the tools, especially on the OT side, maybe the vehicle side, it hasn't gotten to a point where it's just alerting that some standard analyst can really understand. We're still developing those sort of tools. There's a lot of unique equipment, unique situations. And so what we find is in those spaces, we need people that understand each of those domains very closely. So I think as those mature and as the tools mature and as the alerts start to look more similar, then a converged SOC, does seem reasonable and it seems like a great efficiency play. But in terms of getting the most value the fastest, we're still seeing it develop somewhat in pockets for now. But cross-learning, one of the first things that we did at GM was we brought the IT SOC guys and, had them introduced to the vehicle team and said, here's what we do on the IT side. How do we do this here? And that's really kind of how we started thinking about application, sort of monitoring in a vehicle, network monitoring in a vehicle, and starting to put that picture together.
I have to protect IT, I have to protect product, I have to protect plants, okay? And end of the day, when you look at how do you do all that, there's commonality. It's, you want to make sure you understand your attack surface, you want to monitor and get your logs, and then you want to take those logs and reduce the noise. And that's probably where I see the convergence being the best way to reduce the noise, and where I think your top quartile defense departments are doing is you use as much intelligence as you can. And so I think you have a synergy across the different areas you protect to take in intelligence and then cater where you're what you're focused on.
I think having a common playbook, because today we're at a place where an enterprise SOC, the analysts that are looking at an enterprise SOC have no idea what to do with a VSOC, right? The analysts that are looking at a VSOC know what to do with an enterprise SOC, but aren't best equipped to do so. So what I would look for is like a converged playbook. I know it would look like an encyclopedia at the beginning, like a Wikipedia, but no, I think a converged playbook with common TTPs, common resolution mechanisms, and the common kind of certs, right? Security incident responses. We have C-certs, we have P-certs. I would like to see a common cert.
The software-defined vehicle is clearly the future of automobiles. Does this give you optimism or concern from a cybersecurity perspective?
Oh, it's fantastic, right? So delivering secure over-the-air updates, very, very important and an imperative as well. So really, really an important software development. OTA is important for the industry.
It gives me optimism because that means that, as we start to look at more software-defined vehicles, we're starting to look at building tech stacks in-house. And so when you start building tech stacks in-house, there's lesser reliance on open source components or even third-party source components. You have greater control over the security profile. Of course, I'm thinking about security 24/7. So for me, that's a good thing. It gives me optimism. It gives me greater control over our products.
So we can't do this session like this without talking about Gen AI. So my question for you there is, what's either the best or worst use of Gen AI you've seen in cybersecurity recently?
So right now, I think it's more talk and there's discovery and there's a lot of cool startups which are going to help us solve problems. But for me, there's not, besides better data and analytics to identify baselines, there's nothing really shocking yet, okay? But as we get more AI against AI and say the digital assistants, those companions, trusted advisors come to market, which I think we're gonna see 12 to 18 months, that's gonna be huge, right? It's gonna accelerate, it's gonna help a ton. But as then you get into different specific product and tool suites, I think where generative AI is gonna be just super, super exciting from intelligence collection that is refined and then catered to your organization. I think then the subsequent step, and there's kind of risk with this, but then it taking proactive security measures from tightening configs or changing policies to eventually you hear of talk, and I don't know how they're classifying it, but if you're suspecting an attack, you could automatically stand up, say, honeypots in front of it, kind of catch and kill capabilities. So a lot coming that's cool.
Generative AI. I love how it makes us more efficient, has the capability to, especially for the SOC space that we work on, or even our endpoints. I mean, generative AI has been just a true lifesaver, in my opinion. We use some of it even in our email solutions. So these things, it's really going to be transformative. They're going to make us not just more efficient, make us more smarter, maybe be more on the governance side of things, right? We're going to be more proactive, because now with Gen AI, we are looking at cases of our businesses and thinking, how can we preemptive this, given the fact that we can process all this information, that massive information so intelligently. Some of the things that I have seen is we still need to have that human supervision, right? Model poisoning, that's still true. I think even if we're teaching the model certain things, it will hallucinate, good or bad. Sometimes it hallucinates, it's funny, but when it comes to cybersecurity, there's nothing funny about that, right? So we need to be really on top of that model and continue to go back and adjust it and give it the right information. In our cases, for Gen AI, so far it has been working out really well, but we haven't really fully deployed that. As practitioner in general, not talking BorgWarner, but practitioner in general, I don't think we fully embraced it because the business is still trying to figure out what does that mean for us. It's a great technology. It's gonna move us forward. But unless we have a clear understanding of what cases this is gonna apply, it's gonna look like we're applying things haphazardly, and that will lead us to kind of like model poisoning or hallucination, because we just don't know what we're looking for, right? So we have to have a goal.
Best example that I've seen of the use of Gen AI is at threat hunting, right? We all crave for that nugget of threat intelligence that really unlocks security for us. But I've had folks, use it for threat hunting, use it to identify pieces of information that maybe your threat intelligence sources or, dark web can identify for you. But I've seen folks do that for threat hunting. I think that's been the best use case that I've seen thus far.
I think every other day we're seeing, newer and cooler implementations of Gen AI. Actually, I had a slide that was generated by Gen AI. So I asked for like a cool picture that looks like it's digital, and Gen AI created it. I mean, instead of maybe going out there and finding something imperfect, it did that for me. I mentioned it earlier, my 14-year-old daughter, she's like half reading a book, half doing ChatGPT. I'm not sure how that works, but it's this next generation. They're figuring out how to use these tools faster than we are. But I think within, a corporate sort of environment, we talked a little bit about it on the panel here at the ISAC. it's really how it's helping the developers move faster, how they can use Copilot and other tools to really generate code faster. The thing I want is to make sure that code that's being generated by AI is secure. There shouldn't be any question. We've got to make sure that's secure, because I think a lot of times developers are going to take that code and they're not going to spend a lot of time going through it. They want it just to be there and be ready to go. So I think if we can get those two things lined up, we're going to be in good shape.
What's going to be the next game changer for the automotive industry from a cybersecurity perspective? What should we be talking about that we are not currently talking about from an industry perspective?
I would say looking at AI and all that does, but combining and integrating that with what I call machine learning, I think is a really next big step. And that will help us understand all the good things that AI brings, but also helping us to understand, learn from it, and implement, really incredible threat response, anomaly detection, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to see that big data coming together in a meaningful way with a lot of smarts around it. That's not an easy task.
For me, it's really all building the right infrastructure for all of that we're building right now. I think we're talking about it somewhat in the background. We're like, making assumptions that the infrastructure is going to be there, but I don't think we're ready yet. Or we're not investing enough time. I feel like we're doing all these autonomous vehicles and this wonderful technology. Maybe it's in the cloud, working with different partners. But at the end of the day, we need to have the right infrastructure to hold all of that. And it's a harmonized infrastructure, because all the OEMs are not going to become one OEM, maybe, but they all need to agree on how we're going to work together. So I don't think the infrastructure is as resilient as we would like it to be. And we're not having the right conversations yet about that, and we should.
But I think the events of last week have been a game changer, where a quantum computing algorithm was used to unlock an RSA key for the first time. So it means that our current algorithms, our current best practices that we know are going to go out the window in a couple of years down the lane. Something like automotive, and in my industry, it takes even more time to come around to the latest advancements in technology. So we certainly need to start thinking about it. We need to start taking action on it right away.
It really boils down to future architectures. I think, how we can architect risk out. I think I've said this before, if we get into kind of environment that we see in the IT space, where we're constantly detecting and trying to remediate issues in our environment constantly, but in a plant or in a vehicle system, we're in trouble. And we really don't want to get into that mode. So I'm a big proponent of trying to architect that risk out in terms of having resilient architectures, having redundancy, having things that can detect issues and cordon things off automatically, or even just keep things segmented away. I mean, I detect this kind of sentiment where segmentation is not cool anymore. And I'm like, well, actually having an air gap between things is very effective to preventing cyber issues. Now, I think our goal is how do you balance that across, an enterprise where you want to, increase features and capabilities and products, but, we really don't want to get inadvertently to a future where we've added so much connectivity that now it's you can't protect it. It's just too complicated. So striking that balance and trying to address it up front with architecture, I think, becomes one of our most important things. And of course, there's many things after that, but I think we're at that point right now where those are some of the key conversations.
All right, we started with your first car. Make a prediction for us about what do you think your car you might be driving in 20-25 years will be like?
Probably the one I have today, because I keep my cars for a long time. So for all those software developers out there, I need to keep you guys alive and
not want to own it, no insurance, nothing. I just want to get something, get me somewhere. Hopefully that would happen.
It would have to be a Stellantis product, probably a Dodge Ram.
It's hard to see out that far. Probably, it'll probably be autonomous is my guess. It'll probably be electric and that far out. Corvette, electric Corvette or something. Who knows? I mean, that's hard to say.
20, 25 years, hopefully a level 5 autonomous vehicle.